Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Beth Ann DeHaan, and I'm from the Center for Women and Enterprise, and I am going to share my screen and get started. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. So today, this webinar is called Steps to Start a Business. Again, my name is Beth Ann DeHaan, and I'm with the Center for Women and Enterprise. I am a project manager in the Eastern Massachusetts office, so we cover all of Eastern Massachusetts. Just a little bit about myself. I am actually an entrepreneur myself. I've started two businesses in Massachusetts. I owned a cafe and catering business and a wine production company. So I have some experience in starting businesses. I've also done a lot of work with other nonprofits, working with small businesses and the like. So that's a little bit about myself. I just would like to go over a little bit, if you're not familiar with us, who the Center for Women in Enterprise is. So we are a technical assistance provider for small businesses. We focus on women-owned businesses, but we also work with men. We are certainly not exclusive. We will work with anybody who needs us. We also have a veterans business center, so we do a lot of work with veterans as well. And we provide resources for people looking to start, grow, and exit their businesses. We are an economic empowerment organization whose mission is to strengthen communities and the economy by helping women launch and successfully sustain businesses. And of course, not just women, but that is our focus. So what we do, we offer classes and workshops, a little bit like what I'm doing today, on lots of different topics. I'll give you an overview in a minute. We also do one-on-one consultations, either people within CWE, or we also have a large group of volunteer consultants who do one-on-one consultations on any variety of topics. Might be digital marketing, cash flow, social media, legal issues, etc. We hold networking events, and we also do an annual one-day conference in the fall. And we also do WeBank certification, which is certification for women-owned businesses. So lots of different things that we do. Some of the different classes that we offer, one of them is the class that I will be conducting today, Steps to Starting a Business. Other classes that we offer for sort of pre-startup people are, is entrepreneurship even right for you? Business plan writing, legal considerations. These are all classes, again, for people who are thinking about starting a business. Then we have some classes for sort of early stage business owners. Accounting, banking services, employment law, and marketing are just some examples of some of the classes that we offer. Sorry, it went too fast there. And then if you are in sort of a growth phase, we offer several different multi-week classes to really sort of help you get your business to the next level, developing your leadership qualities. And again, I mentioned certification if that's something that you're interested in. So with businesses impacted by COVID-19, this is actually an area that I am working on very heavily. We are working with helping people to access relief funding, so through loan and grant programs, programs like the Massachusetts COVID grant programs or the PPP, which is a federal loan program. We are working on helping people revamp your marketing strategy, especially in times of COVID, reopening safely, making sure you have the right safety precautions in place, tracking your expenses, managing your cash flow in different ways during COVID, working on your strategic innovation, different ways to generate revenue, and then social media strategy. So lots of different classes on specifically things that can help businesses through the COVID-19 pandemic. So in 2019 alone, our offices in Massachusetts helped almost 2,500 participants to help start and grow their own businesses. We trained and counseled about 1,700 women and men. Like I said, we aren't exclusive. We helped create about 1,400 jobs, generate over $42 million in wages. In terms of our client base, about 94% of our clients are women. 60% were low to moderate income, 46 minorities, 20% unemployed, and 4% disabled. So we really try to serve a wide swath of the population with particular emphasis on underserved areas of the community. Okay, so just a few session goals. So first of all, this is a webinar, so that means that you're all muted, but we have honor here from the U.S. Haitian Chamber of Commerce, and she will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A box, and she will monitor them. I will probably answer most of them at the end, but she will take a look, and if there are questions that make sense for me to answer as we go along, she'll jump in and let me know. So please feel free to use the chat for that. So just a few of the goals that we have for this session, trying to offer an understanding of the process for starting a business, provide some information for next steps, and then also to provide some resources for the next steps if you are interested in starting a business. So with that, we will dive right in. So the first thing you want to do if you're thinking about starting a business is make sure you get assistance and training on how to write a business plan. So business plan is the number one thing that you need to do when you're starting a business. It will help you really formulate your ideas, think about things like a legal structure, choosing and registering a business name, determining your financing, so coming up with sort of your projected revenues and expenses, and getting an employment identification number. If it's applicable, you'll be looking for a location, you'll be filing for license and permits. Again, if it's applicable, some businesses require licenses and permits, others don't. You will need to get insurance for your business, set up tax reporting and accounting, understanding employer responsibilities if you are going to be employing people to work for you, and to build out your teams. So why should you write a business plan? I often get this question. It's a lot of work. What is it going to be used for? Why do I need to do it? So first of all, it's going to help you really evaluate and develop your business idea. So you need to ask yourself the following question. Is my idea feasible? Is this going to work? Is this going to make money? Are there people who need my services? Are there enough people? Is there enough of a target market? What is my competition? How many other businesses in my area are doing the same thing that I want to do? What is my competitive advantage? What makes me different? How will I market my business? How am I going to get the word out about what I'm doing? How will I run my business? What will I charge for my products or services? Where will I base my business? How much money do I need to get started? How much will I make in the first year, the second year, third year? These, again, are your financial projections for your businesses. So this really is what we call a roadmap for your first years in business. It will really make you think about all of the things that I just went over. And basically, it will serve as a guide as you are operating in your first years of business. It will help you to minimize risk because it will force you to think about the different risk factors in operating your business. If you are planning to apply for any type of financing, any loans or grants or anything that you would need on a financial level, you will absolutely have to have a business plan. It's not even a maybe. Any bank, any financing organization, any grant giver is going to want to see your business plan. So that's an absolute must. It will be knowledge gained. In order to write the business plan, you will have to do some research, again, on the competition, on the products and services that you're offering. So it will, any type of research, knowledge is power, as they say, and it will increase your chance for success. So what should be included in a business plan? And I'm going to go over some of the sort of top level things that you need to write a business plan, but this is actually one of the courses that we offer at CWE. So if you do want more information about how to write a business plan, I can give you information on some of the courses that we offer. But I will go over a pretty comprehensive list of what the components are. So the first thing you want to have is an executive statement. So this is basically a summary of the business plan, and this needs to be no more than 1 page long. When I was in business school getting my MBA, the first thing they said is don't write anything longer than somebody can look at just while they're having a cup of coffee or something. You want it to be very succinct, and oftentimes the unfortunate truth is a lot of people won't read anything but the summary. And if that doesn't catch their eye, then they won't go into the rest of the business plan. So you need to make sure that you spend a good amount of time on that summary or executive statement. And sometimes it's the last thing you write. You actually go through all of the other detailed parts of the business plan, and then at the end you bring all your thoughts together in the executive statement. Next, you want to have a description of the business, so a clear description of what services or products that you are going to offer in your business. What are your goals? What are your strategies? How you're going to get there. Then you want to have a market analysis. So this is where you're going to have to dig in and do a little bit of research on the market, on the industry that you're going to work on. What are the industry trends? What new and different things are happening in the industry? And then you want to do some research on your target market. Again, who is going to buy your services? Who is going to buy your products? So you need to do all of this research. And again, all of this is knowledge gained, and knowledge is power. Next, you want to look at the competition. So who else is doing what you are doing? Who else is offering the same products? Who else is offering the same services? And why are you a better place to offer those services? So what is your competitive advantage? Will it be cost? Will it be your knowledge, your skills, etc.? Lots of different things can play into your competitive advantage. So you want to come up with all of those different factors in terms of the competition and why you are in a competitive, advantageous position. Next, you want to talk about pricing and the product plan. So you want to have a description of the products and services that you will be offering. You will want to have costs and prices that you will be. So if you are going to have a service-oriented business, what will be your hourly rate? If you are selling products, what will be the manufactured products? At what price will you be selling your goods? And then a gross profit summary. So you want to show your revenues and your expenses, and how much money you think you might make in the first couple of years. Then you want to go into your marketing strategy. So how are you going to get the word out about your business? Are you going to use traditional marketing avenues, newspaper, radio, etc.? Are you going to put up flyers? Are you going to use word of mouth? Are you going to use digital marketing, so social media, using a website, that sort of thing? So how are you going to get the word out, and how will you promote your product? So this is a resource that you can use to do some of this market research and competitive analysis. This is a site that is maintained by the Small Business Administration, and in general, the SBA has lots of different resources in terms of market research or competitive analysis or anything. They're a wonderful resource. We are actually a partner organization for the SBA, and the SBA funds a lot of our activities, and we work very closely with them. So great resource for anything to do with small businesses. So continuing on with the business plan, next you want to have an operations plan. So how are you going to make all of this happen? If you are going to be manufacturing a product or purchasing supplies, from whom will you buy the supplies or equipment, how will you distribute the products? Again, if you're selling an actual product, will you have a brick and mortar store? Will you distribute online, etc.? You want to talk about inventory and quality control. Again, if you are planning to sell a product as opposed to a service. Next, you want to get into the management and personnel, and this is really important. So basically, a business is only as good as the people and the management who are running it. So here, you want to get into a detailed description of the management team, what their duties will be. If it's going to be just a sole proprietorship, if it's just going to be you, then you want to have a detailed description of why you have the skills and the expertise to start this kind of business. So you want to include your resume or your CV and a detailed description of why you are the best person to run and manage this business. Then you have your whole sort of financial section of the business plan. So what your financial needs are, your income and cash flow. So cash flow is very important. I always say with both businesses I started, we came up with an amount of cash that we thought we would need working capital for the first year. And in both cases, we needed at least twice what we thought we would need. So I always give as a rule of thumb that if you think you're going to need $100, plan on having at least 200 because you just never know what's going to happen when you start your business. There are always unknowns, and especially after the last year, we can certainly say that that came in spades in 2020. So normally you don't have events that are that catastrophic, but you never know what might happen. So always have enough cash on hand to make sure that you can keep the business afloat in those first couple of years. You're going to want to have balance sheets and a break-even analysis. So how many widgets do you have to sell in order to break even, or how many hours of service do you need to provide in order to break even? So very important. And then finally, in the annexes, you're going to have supporting documents. So these would include, again, maybe your resume, your CV, the CVs of other people in the management team. You might have more detailed research, some of the research that you did on the competition or the market analysis, anything that can support the rest of your business plan. So those are basically the key components of a business plan. And again, we do go into more detail on some of this in some of our other courses if you are interested in sort of diving into this more deeply. Okay, getting business assistance and training. This is really important too. So none of us are experts in everything. So we might, if you're planning to open a beauty salon, let's say, you might be an expert in cutting hair and styling hair, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are an expert accountant or an expert lawyer or anything like that. So you have to make sure that you tap into the resources that are available to you. There are lots of free things. So taking CWE courses and getting counseling, all of the things that we do are for the most part free of charge. I mentioned the SBA for other counseling resources, things like SCORE. SCORE is part of the SBA too. It's the Society of Retired Executives. They work with small businesses. I actually used a SCORE counselor when I started my first business, and it was extremely helpful. Again, all free of charge. Talk with other business owners. Maybe you have friends that have similar businesses. Find out what they're doing. Find a mentor. Find someone who is doing a business that is like yours, and see what advice they might have. The other thing that is important to do is to get an accountant, to get a lawyer that can help you with some of the legal considerations. Find a bookkeeper, someone that has those expertises. The next thing you want to do is determine the legal structure of your business. So again, this is very important. Different things that you need to consider. What kind of business will you start? How big or small? Is it just going to be you? Are you going to have 10 employees? How many owners? Is it just going to be you? You might want to be a sole proprietor. Are you going to have one partner? You need to decide who will make decisions for the company. So even if you have a partner, who is going to have maybe control? Where will you be doing business? So different towns and different states have different rules around the legal structure. Will you need working capital from a lender or an investor? What are the liability risks of the business? This is very important when you're figuring out the legal structure. So you don't want to put your personal assets or um, uh, your personal finances at risk. Um, what kind of personal assets do you have? A lot of money that you need to protect? Then that's something else to think about. And will you need to protect those assets from the business? So, starting from sort of the most basic type of legal structure, we have a sole proprietorship. So, this means that you are self employed and you are the sole owner of an unincorporated business. So, what are the advantages of this? So, this is very easy to set up. You don't have to file anything um, with the state. You have total control and flexibility. You can pretty much do whatever you want. You can make all the decisions, and you have sole ownership of all the profits of the business. What are the disadvantages? The big one, and this is why this is in all caps, is liability. You are solely responsible for any liability or any of the losses of the business. So if you're not in a high risk business, then this might be perfectly fine. Um, but it's definitely something to think about if you're setting up a sole proprietorship. So what does it look like? Normally you would file for a DBA. So a DBA is called a doing business as. So the name of your company might be um, just Beth Ann's Beauty Salon. Um, and but the actual name of the business might be, I don't know, XYZ Beauty Salon. So you would have a business name and you would file a DBA in the city or town where you live. This is not necessarily recognized as a company, but it is, again, just as it sounds like, doing business as. How do you set that up? You file for an employee identification number with the IRS. You set up bank accounts. It's always a good idea, even if you're going to be a sole proprietor, to set up separate bank accounts for your business revenues and expenses. And it's, again, this is the easiest way to set up a business. Very straightforward, and it doesn't require any sort of financial investment. The next type of business, I'm just going to wet my whistle a little bit. Then the next type of legal structure is a general partnership, and this is when you have two or more people who own the business. Again, advantages, very easy to set up, no filing necessary. It's a greater possibility of growth. You get to split the profits and losses. Again, a big disadvantage is liability. Or the other thing that might happen is a disagreement between the partners. And believe me, even if it's a family member or your best friend in the world, there are always chances for disagreements that you might not. I owned a business with my brother, and even though we're very close, we had a lot of disagreements. Sometimes with a family member, it's even more difficult. So always, make sure you have a partnership agreement, and think about any scenarios that might come down the pike. In terms of setting it up, again, filing for an EIN with the IRS with both partners, then you want to definitely have a partnership agreement with the defining ownership. So is it going to be a 50-50 split? Is it going to be a 40-60 split? If you want to be a woman-owned business and if you're a woman and you're in partnership with a man, you might want to think about having a 51-49 split so that you can be considered a woman-owned business. Those are all things to think about. Next, we have different kinds of corporations. So a corporation is a legal entity that is separate from the owner. The biggest advantage here is the liability is on the corporation, not on you personally. So this is super important because you don't want someone to come after you or your family or your personal assets. If you are incorporated as a legally recognized corporation, if anybody wants to sue you, they will sue the business, not you. So this is super important. This also gives you greater access to business expertise and also makes it easier to raise capital. So if you go to a bank or you go to a lender and you're trying to get money for your business, it's always going to be easier if you are set up as a corporation. Some of the disadvantages, you do have a slightly increased tax burden. You have to, it costs a little bit more to actually form and set up. You have to follow regulations, and you will usually need an attorney to help you to prepare and file the documents. So there are some costs and some expertise involved. Another type of corporation is a limited liability. Yes.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
Okay. We have here, what does not recognized as a company mean for Gen partnership and sole proprietorship?
Right. So that basically means that, you're not going to be filing separate tax returns. You just file your personal tax returns, and then you file what they call a Schedule C that shows any of your business revenues and expenses. But you aren't recognized as a company. In other words, again, getting back to the liability question, if somebody decides to sue the sole proprietorship, they are suing you as a person. So that's basically what that means. You're not a company, you're just Jane Smith. You're not a company, you're just a sole proprietor. So I hope that makes sense. And again, a lot of it gets back to the tax returns that are filed. If you are a sole proprietorship or just a partnership, you just file personal tax returns with what they call a Schedule C. So hopefully that clarifies that. So the next type of company is an LLC. This is a great structure for a small company with sort of 1, 2, or 3 people, or even bigger. Both of my companies that I set up, we formed as LLCs because we were fairly small. We just had a couple of directors. It's recognized by the state, again, separate corporate shield for liability. So again, if something goes wrong and someone decides to sue you, they would be suing the company as opposed to you. They can't go after any of your personal assets. So again, a really good reason for doing this. Some of the disadvantages, again, same with the corporation. You have some more formalities. You have to file with the Secretary of State. You have to have an operating agreement. That's an absolute, a mandatory agreement. You also have some tax issues, and it does cost some money to do this. So those are things that you need to think about. S corporations. So this is also recognized by the state, very, very similar to an LLC, separate corporate shield. Some of the disadvantages, again, you have the filing requirements and some expenses. You can issue stock. And again, this is all set up with the Secretary of State. And all of these things, I would say, I'm going to get to this in a second, but we actually offer a whole, I'm not an attorney, but we offer a whole webinar. In fact, we have one next week, and I'm going to give you information about this. just on the legal structure of businesses and what considerations you have. And we actually have an attorney who goes through all of this. So I would say if you have some, uh, basic questions like the one we just had, that's great. But I would say if you have any more really in-depth questions on this whole legal considerations question, I would highly um, recommend you taking our legal considerations webinar. But I'll just finish going through the sort of high level of this. So just a few differences between a C Corp or just a straight up corporation. The default, if you just file something with the Secretary of State, the C Corp is the default. You have to elect to be an S Corp. There's a certain form that you would fill out. So a C Corp, you don't have to be a U.S. resident, so there's no residency requirement here. There's no limit to the number of shareholders. You are actually taxed twice, so both at the corporate and shareholder level. And if you are an S Corp, you are taxed as an S corporation. And again, I am not an attorney, so if you have specific questions on these things, I would recommend taking the webinar. I would also, if you take the webinar that we have next week, if you are interested in that, you'll get some more detailed answers to some of the questions from the lawyer that runs our webinar. But it's also very, very important if you are thinking about any kind of corporate structure, so an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, or any of those. Definitely, you want to have a lawyer and a CPA to discuss all of the tax and legal implications that might occur. And one thing to note is that you can also always change your structure from the most basic. So if, for example, if you just want to get your business up and running and it's really just you, best thing to do is just set up a sole proprietorship unless you have real liability issues. And then it's very easy to change and set up a more complex corporation as your business evolves or as you have the resources for the filing fees and the legal fees, et cetera. So as I said, we do have a webinar that is entirely devoted to legal considerations for new businesses. And this will be offered on Tuesday, January 19th. So that's next Tuesday at 5 p.m. And again, if this is something that you need help with, I would very much recommend signing up for this. And I will give you information at the end of this webinar as to how you can sign up for any of our webinars.
Beth, I have another question for you.
Okay.
From Rotating Facility asks, can the owners be employees W-4 of an LLC?
Can the owners
Be an employee of an
Oh
LLC?
yes. Oh yes, of course. Of course. Yes. Yes. The owners can be an employee that you can pay yourself payroll. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. So the next thing that's very important is to choose and to register a business name. And registering is the key word here. So when you're thinking about a name for your business, you want to think about different kinds of things. So is it descriptive of my business? You want to make sure that people understand when they hear the name that they say, oh, okay, that's this kind of business. Does my name have staying power? So what does that mean? That basically means you don't want to pick something that's maybe super, super trendy and might, be or some kind of slang or lingo that might, go out of fashion soon. So that's, something you want to avoid. You want to think about a logo, and you can design a logo yourself. You can get a graphic designer to do it, and you want to make sure that your logo makes sense with your name or your business. You want to think about your domain name. So this is your website name. So will your website just be the name of your business? That's usually the best way to go so that people can easily find you. But you want to make sure that it's available. So this is something that's really important. Even if you're thinking about, several different business names and you haven't quite decided, which one you might choose, check to see if the domain name is available. So if your business is called XYZ Beauty Salon, so you want to do a search, XYZ Beauty Salon, is that already taken as a domain name? If it is there a slightly different name that you could use for your website? Or if not, then you might want to think about another name. The other thing is, as I said, if you're thinking about a couple different names, you're not quite sure which one you might choose, go ahead and register for the domain name. It's not expensive, but in the long run, it will be really important. So if you have, let's say 2 or 3 names that you're kind of contemplating, you haven't quite figured out, go ahead and get in there and register for the domain name. Again, not expensive, but you'll have it, and then you won't be disappointed when it comes time to setting up your website. And you can also buy it just for a short time. You can buy it for 6 months or a year, and then when you decide on a different name, then you can let it go. If you're planning to work internationally, make sure that your business name is going to make sense and function internationally. So you don't want to pick a name that is insulting in another culture or in another language. That's really important. How will I include my legal structure in the name? Are you going to be XYZ LLC, for example? You want to think about that. Will it include my personal name? So again, if you are a consulting business or any type of personal care business that you're going to operate just with your own name, will your business name be Jane Smith Inc? You want to think about that. Now, not only do you want to register your domain name, but even more important is registering your actual business name. So this is where you are going to have to do some research. You can go on the mass.gov site, or if you happen to live in Rhode Island, rhodeisland.gov, or any state. You will file a doing business as, or if you're a sole proprietorship, or if you are a corporation, you would file a certificate of incorporation. And then if you do have a corporate name, you'll file that on the state level. But here, the other thing that you need to do is to make sure that the business name is not already taken. So there are different laws in different states. So in Massachusetts, it requires anyone who's conducting businesses under an alias, meaning a name other than your own, you have to file a business certificate or a DBA in the community. So if you live in Boston, if you live in Lowell, if you live in Lawrence, if you live in Brockton, then you would file the DBA in the town where you're doing business. Rhode Island has similar state laws, and you just need to check that wherever you live. So the other thing, before I get away from this, in terms of registering your business, you need to, if you're planning to sell a product, you need to make sure that the product name is not taken. So this is where you're going to do some research on trademarking. And again, there are sites that are free that you go on and you do a search on the name that you're thinking about using, and then make sure that it's not already taken as a product name. And believe me, this is important to do. I can also say from experience that when we were setting up our second company, we set up our corporate name, and we had planned to use that same name on our product. And when it came time to actually sell the product, when we went to trademark the name, we found out it was already being used. So we had to go back and sort of redo everything. So these are all things that you need to think about right from the start when you're setting up your business. Now, we were just selling one product. So a lot of companies, if you're setting up a business name and you're manufacturing a product, you might have lots of different products, but you need to make sure that all of those are registered, that they're not already taken, because if they are, and if you go out and start selling your product with a name that has already been trademarked or taken, you can get into big trouble. You can be sued. So not something to play around with. So definitely do the research right from the beginning. The next thing I want to talk about is determining money. What kind of financing are you going to need for your business? So first of all, what are your startup costs? So what will you need to actually get the business up and running? Uh, and again, this is, you always plan on more than you think that you might need. So um, super important. So if you have a brick and mortar store and you have to do any kind of build out or renovations to the business, what is all of that going to cost? Do you have to purchase equipment to get your business running, or to manufacture your goods? You're going to need all of that. If you are running a consulting business, will you need computers and technology, website development, all of that? These are all things that you're going to think about in terms of startup costs. When will you start generating cash? So super important. When are you going to actually start generating revenues? When will you make your first sale? When will your services commence? And this all gets into cash flow or working capital. So this is what I talked about earlier when I said, well, you're going to need this much cash to keep the business afloat. Always plan for a cushion. And because the revenues might be later, or they might be lower than you were expecting, and the expenses might be higher than expected. And oftentimes they are. There are always things that you don't plan on, especially in the expense realm. And like I said, I've learned from experience. Both businesses I started, we ended up needing at least twice what we thought we would need in terms of working capital and cash flow. Okay, if you do plan to borrow or seek investors, so some people might just you might just plan to set up your business with your personal savings, or you might get loans from friends or family. But many people need to get a loan or an investor to start out. So make sure you're very clear when you talk to a lender, um, or even a family member if you're borrowing from them. Make sure you're very clear about what you're going to use these funds for. Are you going to use the funds to buy equipment, to buy a computer, to set up a website, to buy inventory, etc.? Be very clear about that. Choose the right amount, the right time, the right terms, and the right conditions. So you don't want to get yourself into a, short-term, high interest rate loan that you're going to need to pay back right away, and that could be financially crippling. So make sure that you read all the fine print and talk to your accountant or bookkeeper about what is feasible. Always want to open a business checking account and establish a relationship with a banker. This is true even if you are just a sole proprietor and it's just you. You want to make sure you always keep your personal and your business finances separate. Okay, so what are some of the different funding options? Oftentimes it can be tough to get a loan as a startup business, but there are different ways that you can do it. Bootstrapping. So this is when you just use your personal resources, your personal savings to get yourself started. Debt financing. So this is actually borrowing or getting a loan. So oftentimes banks are leery about lending to startups. So sometimes a better way to get a loan is from a microcredit or nonprofit lenders. So examples of these would be like Action or Seed. These are two microcredit. Action actually changed their name. They are now Ascendus, I think. But if you Google Action, Accion, they are a microcredit loan provider, and they are focused on lending to what they call the unbankable. And that sounds like a horrible term, but oftentimes regular traditional banks consider startups as unbankable. They're too much of a risk. So those are a couple ways you can get some funding. The next thing is kind of a newfangled way to get money, funding. So these are things like GoFundMe and things like that. You may have seen them on your Facebook page or on Twitter. These are lots of very small contributions from lots of people via the internet. So this is a fairly new way to get some money and can be very successful if you have good networks, good social networks on social media. It can be very lucrative. Friends and family, you might borrow money from your parents or your siblings or your friends. Again, always be careful with this. Make sure that you have agreements in place and treat it like a business transaction. Again, debt financing from banks, these, are harder to do as a startup, but banks that work with SBA loans will be more open to that. So if you are interested in getting debt financing, you would want to look for banks that work with the SBA. Angel investors and venture capitalists, again, these three things: the debt financing from banks, angel investors, and venture capitalists. These, are usually investors that are looking at either more established businesses or much bigger sort of ventures. And then finally, you have grants. Now, in general, in normal times, grants are not generally available for-profit businesses. Grants usually go to nonprofits, community organizations, and that sort of thing. Now, in times of COVID, this has been not the case. A lot of grants have been going to for-profit businesses because they're trying to make sure that businesses can stay on their feet through the pandemic. But in general, if you are a startup business, it is generally difficult to find a grant. That being said, there are some organizations that cater specifically towards women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. So there might be some grants out there for different communities. So it's not something that you should completely discount. Could be possible. Okay, so what else do you need to do? You need to get an employee identification number, and a lot of people ask, do I need this? And if you can answer yes to any of these questions, you have employees. Do you operate as a corporation or a partnership? Do you file special tax returns? Do you withhold taxes on income other than wages? Are you involved with organizations such as trusts, estates, nonprofits? In general, it's always a good idea to have an EIN, as opposed the choice is, especially if you're a sole proprietor or any small entity, the choice is to either use an employee identification number or your social security number. And it's always a good idea to keep, again, just like your bank accounts, to keep your business name and everything separate from your personal assets and name. So I would say in almost any case, you should get an employee identification number just to keep everything separate. And it doesn't cost anything, so worth doing. So this is how you can apply for it. You do it through the IRS. You can either call or go to the IRS website. And again, you can use your Social Security if you are a sole proprietor, but it's absolutely recommended to have an EIN. Okay, so if you are going to be a manufacturing company or a brick and mortar location, you're going to need a location. How do you choose a location? You want to think about visibility and accessibility. Is there parking? Can people see you from the street if that is necessary? What is the target market? You don't want to set up a shop that is selling things in a town where people aren't interested in buying them. So make sure that the target market is going to buy your products or services. Look around at the competition. If you're setting up a beauty salon, maybe you don't want to set it up on the same block with 4 other beauty salons. Too much competition is not necessarily good. What are the sources of supply in a particular town? Are there too many beauty salons or too many of businesses doing the same thing you are? You want to make sure that you consider that. Sources of supply actually has to do with getting inventory or goods and services. Let's say you're setting up a restaurant and you're way out in the country. How often will you be able to get deliveries for your business? So that's what that means. Labor force. This is really important. If you are going to be relying on hourly employees that have to rely on public transport, make sure you are someplace where they can access you by bus or by the T. This is really important, especially in businesses like restaurants, et cetera, that rely on a lot of hourly employees who rely on public transport. And then cost. You don't want to break the bank by paying too much rent. Make sure that it's a good location, but that the cost for the rent, or if you're purchasing a location, that it's not going to kill you in the first year. This is a mistake a lot of people make. Filing for licenses and permits. So this really depends on the type of business that you're operating, and it also depends on the location of the business. So some businesses require lots of licenses and permits, some don't. You have federal licenses and state licenses. And a great place to look for the requirements for your business, the SBA website will have a lot of information on federal licenses and permits. And then at the state level, you can either go to mass.gov or Rhode Island.gov or whatever state you're in.gov and find out what you need to operate your business. You want to get insurance. Now, different types of businesses have different insurance needs. Property and liability. Any business is going to need liability insurance. In case anything goes wrong and somebody sues you, you want to make sure you're covered. You will need property insurance if you have a brick and mortar store or a manufacturing facility. Again, you need to talk to an insurance broker who will be able to, help you with all of these things. You might, if you have employees and you want to offer benefits, this is another thing you need to think about. Workers' compensation, which is a requirement, as is disability. So often, again, different businesses have different insurance needs. So talk to an insurance broker and find out what you need. Next, you want to set up tax reporting and accounting. You want to consider hiring an accounting professional to do your bookkeeping, knowing how to read financial statements. Again, a lot of us are not experts in all of these things. We may be a fabulous chef or a hairdresser or whatever it is you do, but you don't necessarily have the the expertise in finance or accounting. So make sure you surround yourself with people who know how to do these things. If you don't have the money to hire some of these people, you can use something like QuickBooks, which is very easy to use, accounting software, or there are other softwares out there as well. Understand your employee responsibilities. So if you decide to hire employees, make sure you know all of the relevant employment laws. Make sure you have an established interview process, develop an employee handbook, think about hiring contractors instead of full-time employees. And again, consult different experts on record keeping and reporting requirements. And even though it sounds, even if you just have a few employees, consider using a payroll processing firm to issue checks, pay taxes, file reports, take out all of the necessary deductions from the payroll. It's absolutely worth the money to do that. I can speak from experience there. Again, build teams. Again, you are not going to be an expert in everything. So think about having a lawyer, an accountant, CPA, an insurance broker, etc. And then you're going to have your employees, your business partners. Everything is a team. So these are all really important things to remember. So just a couple things, if you take nothing else away from this webinar, I'd like you to remember the following things. Make sure that you write a business plan, use it as your roadmap, and update it. It shouldn't be something that you write and stick in your desk drawer and never look at again. Things are going to be changing. You're going to be changing your strategy. You'll be changing your marketing plan. You always want to update it and just keep it fresh so that you can always refer to it. And again, if as your business grows, you need to uh, have additional financing, you will have that business plan updated and ready to go. Use the resources available to help you. Use CWE, use the SBA, use SCORE, use all of the different organizations that are out here, most of which are free of charge. Take advantage of all of the different classes that you can. And always be learning about your industry and how to best manage your business. It's you're on a learning curve, and there are always new things that you can learn. Just a few useful websites. I put some of these in the slides earlier, but SBA.gov, IRS.gov, CWE Online. So that is our website where you can access a lot of our different courses. You can sign up to get on our email list, and we send out lots of emails about all of the different classes that we offer. Mass.gov, Rhode Island.gov, or whatever state.gov is going to help you. So again, I am here to help at any time. If you have questions about starting up your business, myself or my colleague Daisy, we are both here. Daisy is a Spanish speaker. I'm a French speaker. So if you need a French speaker or Spanish speaker, we can both work with you there. This is how you access our website, and then you have our email addresses there. So with that, I'm going to stop the share, and I see that we do have some questions. So I'm going to open up the chat, and let's see. I'm going to start. I know we answered a couple of the questions, but I'm going to go.
I think that we answered most of them.
We did. You've been monitoring it, that.
Yes.
So what have I not?
I think you answered everything. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. You've answered all the questions that they've given us so far.
That's fantastic. Well, if anybody has any additional questions, we do have just a minute or so left if you want to pop something in the chat. But I hope this has been useful, and I hope you're enjoying the rest of the conference. It looks like there are lots of great speakers, and it looks like a lot of fun. So.
Well, thank you so much, Beth, because actually everything you went through today was very informative, and
I'm glad.
It was very educational. You went through a lot in this hour.
It is a lot. It is a lot. It's a lot to digest. And as I said, if anybody is interested in more information on a particular topic, definitely check out some of the upcoming classes at CWE, and we're updating them all the time. But a couple of them that we are doing in the next couple of weeks are the legal considerations class and the business plan basics class. So, really great information there if you're looking at those things. So, yeah, and it looks like the video will be uploaded to the website, so you'll be able to access it again and see the presentation. So with that, if you don't have any more questions, thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Beth. The same with you, and thank you everyone who joined in today with us.
Yeah.
Have
Thanks,
a great
Honor.
day.
Thanks, everyone.